Welcome to Let's Talk UCA, the podcast where we connect, collaborate and communicate with chiropractors from around the globe. I'm Holly, and in this episode I'm joined by Laura Beaumont-Perry as we speak with Kirsti Janse Van Vuuren. Kirsti shares her journey into chiropractic and her transition from a mechanistic education to a more vitalistic approach. We explore the philosophy behind chiropractic, the role of personal choices in health, the growing influence of AI within the profession, and the importance of mentorship in preserving chiropractic principles for future generations. Really looking forward to today's episode, and I know that our podcast listeners are as well. First things first, Kirsti, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Just taking the dog for a walk, so bright and fresh day.
Excellent. And where are you based? Where in the world are you?
So I'm based in Norfolk, east coast of England. I practice in a small little village called Poringland, about 10 miles south of Norwich.
Amazing. Fantastic. I guess the first thing I wanted to ask, or one of the first questions I like to ask our podcast guests, are how did you find your way into chiropractic? How did it all start for you? And what do you love most?
I always knew I wanted to work with people and helping people, but I didn't want to be in a medical environment. I wasn't really smart enough to be a physio. My A-levels didn't allow that. So a friend of mine was going to the University of Glamorgan to do sports science, and I'd thought I would go and study anatomy at Liverpool, but I didn't do very well in my A-levels. So I was just a bit lost and was flicking through the prospectus of my friend who's going to the University of Glamorgan and saw this thing called chiropractic and went, that's pretty cool. Let's see what that's all about. And was lucky enough to get on the second entry year into the Welsh Institute of Chiropractic. So I used to say it found me, but a mentor of mine said, really, you find it. So I think it was lots of things that lined up. So yeah. And I love it.
Amazing. And so so you hadn't seen a chiropractor before?
No.
You hadn't been adjusted, you just went, this is what I'm going to study?
Yeah, I had seen an osteopath before. And so my thinking was maybe if I went and did anatomy, but I didn't want to go to an osteopathic or a private college. I wasn't interested in, I wanted to go to university. I was 18. I wanted that university experience. I didn't want to go to a college or a private college or anything like that. So, So went there, did that. And so I had never been checked, never seen a chiropractor.
Wow.
Blind.
So what was the moment then that you sort of really fell in love with it? Because it's one thing going and doing a course. And I know a lot of people, when I was at university, because I also went to Glamorgan, they did the course maybe to get that university experience more than actually the love of the course or the potential job at the end of it.
I think it was probably a combination of knowing that I wanted to do something that was going to help people, knowing that I wanted to work with the body, and this kind of ticked all the boxes. So I was already super excited about going and doing that. Why? Because it's a very mechanistic college. So meaning that it's doesn't necessarily have the understanding of vitalistic principles at its core. Well, that's what happened when I went. But that suited me really well because I didn't really know any different from that. So when I qualified, I was super happy. I qualified with a degree that meant that I could go and earn money and help people. And both my parents did vocational degrees. One was a teacher, one was an architect. And so I wanted to go and do a degree that meant that I got a job. So that was box ticked, came out, got a job. But the job I went into was a very vitalistic, subluxation-based job. And I was, my mind blown. I had a complete fish out of water. So that's where my journey started, in really kind of going, what is this thing that I've actually come into? Like, I was taught it was this mechanistic treatment for lower back pain, neck pain, headaches, but actually it's potentially this other thing that I had no idea about. So I think I've fallen in love with chiropractic as I've been a chiropractor. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So you didn't know going into that first job how different it was going to be from the uni experience?
No idea. even though I'd gone and looked at some offices, like I'd done a little bit of shadowing, but more with the opportunity of can I get a job, not really with the opportunity of understanding what chiropractic is. And I remember going to a guy in Newcastle that did open room chiropractic. I was like, what is this? Just hugging everybody, handing out roses on Valentine's Day. It was very, very different from white coats, regionally adjusting. Very, very different. But exciting. And I think that for me, isn't that great? Now I think it's great. But then I had no clue.
I think sometimes as well, though, it's important to figure it out for yourself as you go, rather than, like you say, at university, you just taught that one way. How do you think then what you've learnt along the way has shaped you and your sort of family with, starting off from that mechanistic education to where you are now?
I think it gives me a nice perspective on maybe how the majority of our culture maybe views health and bringing up families. But it allows, chiropractic gives me a compass and a foundation to maybe do things differently. So having that understanding that the body's intelligent, it's designed to heal. You ask a different question around maybe things like, oh, why my kid's creating a fever, and even that language of creating a fever is different. You're more excited about it. It's like inquiring, like, why is your body doing this? How are you getting on? Are you handling it well? What do I need to help support you? Like it just gives you different questions to ask, which probably I wouldn't have done before had I not had the understanding of, the philosophy of which chiropractic kind of aligns to. So does that answer that question? I think so. Yeah.
I think so. That was a good answer.
Thanks.
What did you say was how did you describe the fever? Your body's not having creating a fever. I like that. Excellent.
Sarah Farrant talks about that a lot. She talks about how we have health expressions,
Mm-hmm.
and that the body is never doing anything wrong. It's adapting to the environment it's presented to. So, a fever is a very intelligent thing that the body is doing. It's creating an environment to heal, to recover, to regenerate, to change. And it's that question of how is the body coping with that that's important. I've got twins. One, when they create a fever, goes super high, super fast, but very calm and quiet with it, and just sleeps and is really her body just wants to rest and sleep with it. The other one doesn't spike super high, but goodness me, do you know about it? She screams and cries and complains. And so they handle it very differently. So your support of the child is different, right? So,
yeah.
But both are intelligent expressions of a body dealing with something in order to recover and heal. So, yeah.
So I suppose that leads on to a nice question of what role do you think chiropractic plays in the wider sort of healthcare system in the future?
I think it gives us options, right? It gives people the opportunity to explore a different perspective on health and life, really. So it's that perspective that we're designed to do things and respond and adapt, and our body is very intelligent, and it's an amazing thing that we have. And just to ask that question of, oh, that's interesting, why would this be happening? Why would the body be doing this? Rather than it's bad luck, bad genes, bad germs, you go somewhere to fix something. It's giving the option of someone to have autonomy and control and choices. So that's where I feel we serve beautifully. And like, it's correct. It's true. Nature is intelligent. It does heal. It does regenerate. And we see it all the time in a tree growing. And so it's foundationally true. So that's another reason why I like it. And I think it's great. I just want people to have informed options and understanding and autonomy. So I think chiropractic fits beautifully within that.
That's a lovely answer. Thank you. One of the questions I sent you yesterday, I don't know if you got it, was how would somebody know they're healthy? Now, I saw this on a Facebook post and it really spiked my interest because I don't know how I would answer that question, which is why I sent it to you in hope that you might have a chance to prep rather than me throwing you in the deep end.
So I think being healthy is your ability to adapt. So someone would say, like the fever question, oh, that's not very healthy. It's completely healthy. Like, it's a completely healthy response. I think healthy is, there's a quote of what health is, which is that physical optimal well-being without the absence of disease. But it's an expression. So you being healthy is an expression of that. It's an expression of the choices that you've made. So for someone that maybe has chosen not to sleep very well, eat very well, move very well, they'll be expressing the best health they can with those choices that they've made. Now, I might not view that as healthy choices, but I know their body's doing the best health expression it can based on those choices. So for me, health is the cumulative impact of the choices that you've made. So healthier choices, which are common sense, but they doesn't necessarily mean that's common. That's what health is, right?
Cool. That's a lovely answer again. Yeah.
That is. I want to ask, how do you think some of your patients would answer that question? Like if perhaps you had a brand new patient or even a patient for, 10 years or so, if you were to ask them, what is your definition of healthy, what do you think their answer might be? And, hopefully how it may have changed over their time, with chiropractic care.
Oh, I'd love for them to say optimal well-being, like functioning really well, but they're probably going to say feeling good.
Yeah.
And hey, that's true, right? Because if we express health, we generally feel good, right? But you can also express health and feel awful, like food poisoning. You're going to feel really awful, but actually it's very healthy. So it's your body getting rid of something it doesn't like. So it's just rewording that. But everyone, even the most educated patient, client, would say feeling good. And that's true and correct. But you might just have a conversation around, actually, isn't it functioning well too? Yeah, I think long-term clients would probably say, they probably have the ability to say, oh, but I know that my body, I might not feel great, but actually that's a very healthy thing that I'm doing. Does that make sense? Yeah, so I think that would probably be the answer.
There's a question about how do you view our ability to preserve chiropractic for the future generations? And I kind of feel like you've touched on this a little bit with, the choices that people can make and having more choices and more options and more questions. But yeah, how do you see that?
So from a professional point of view, I think it's really important that we align to a foundational, a foundational truth that chiropractors are different because we locate, detect, and correct vertebral subluxation. Like, that's what we do. That's what makes us distinct and different from every other profession in the world. And if we're not careful, that's going to get diluted and lost. So it's very important that we constantly reflect and talk and mention that the whole time that we're with the people that we serve and within the profession. Like, you can do other stuff. Like, I'm not saying you can't do other things, but it's just really important that you make sure that you say, let's check and correct what we're finding, and make that the foundation. That's vital. And in order to be able to do that, you need to have good people around you to support you. So mentorship, for me, is a vital part of what keeps chiropractic growing and flourishing. And that might be small little mentorship groups. Like, I've got a lovely little group called the Chiropractic Partnership. One of 4 practices. We meet once a month, kind of go through chiropractic stuff, like in our practices or in our lives, and it's so important because we're this outlying profession with a very different perspective to maybe common culture on health and how we can live our lives, and so we need to kind of look after each other, and that's what mentorship does. I also think it's very important that as maybe more seasoned chiropractors, we help support those that are studying or new in practice. And if every chiropractor could sit and have a cup of tea over Zoom with a student or a recent grad, I'm talking like 20 minutes over a lunch break, and just talk through what life is like what you're doing, how you're getting on, maybe a case or something to do with the GCC or whatever it might be, and we just start that conversation, that's going to allow people to really just gain an understanding of the importance of this thing called a subluxation and what it does and how it affects us and why the body would create it, and just that certainty in what it is. And, the principles of chiropractic based on that, the body is intelligent, it's designed to heal, those sorts of things. Got to be a different landscape. It doesn't cost anything either, right? Yeah, time. But 20 minutes over a cup of tea, that's nothing really. So mentorship.
That's some beautiful reminders from your talk in October. I really enjoyed that. So thank you again for that.
Thank you.
You sort of touched on the GCC a little bit there. Yeah, there's a sort of couple of points around, how both the UCA and the GCC sort of recognizing, what we do day to day. And, you've kind of touched on it again with the different sort of definitions of health that you brought in. The things that we see day to day isn't necessarily the things that we creep up in the big research papers, but it's an inherent part of, what we do and what we see. So yeah, I don't know if you have an answer to that question.
I think that unfortunately, people that are doing people that are subluxation based chiropractors, generally just in the trenches looking after people, right? We've and unfortunately we've not. I felt a bit like we get down in the trenches and we're working, and then suddenly we put our head up and we go, "Oh my goodness me, where's chiropractic going? What's going on?" And these big leaders of our profession within our regulatory bodies may have different perspectives on what chiropractic is, and they've just set down the rules as such, the codes. And so it's on us, right, to try and shift that understanding. But we live in a culture that is symptom orientated and evidence based. And so you've got to kind of play the game a little bit if we're a regulated profession. But we do have a responsibility to just question and be strong in our understanding of what it is that we do. So that again is that idea of these small little mentorship states, because I do think it's going to feed into a greater understanding that then we can help to shift the conversation within those regulatory bodies. And I'm very guilty of it, right? 25 years nearly out of practice. And I was working, raising a family, doing my thing, figuring out who I was and what I thought chiropractic was and how I really gained a good understanding of it. And now we have these shifts and changes, and I'm like, oh, hold on a minute, that's not chiropractic. When did that happen? So, that's on me to try and shift that and make it different.
And how do you think that could happen? Because obviously we're hearing you say about, in the trenches and different mentorship groups and things. I see a lot of people in our profession in the exact same scenario that you've just talked about there. So if someone was listening to this going, well, that sounds just like me, I'm busy with work, I'm busy with the kids, etc. What would maybe your advice be as a starting point?
Just get really clear on what chiropractic is and talk about that within your office with the people that you're serving. Like, just get really clear on it, which is that we check, locate, and detect vertebral subluxation. That's what makes us distinct as a profession. So talk about that, and then find other chiropractors that talk about that, and then hang out, and then talk about things. And then when you have opportunities to speak with the GCC, talk about it with that. Like, just start this. I'm a bit of a gentle whispering chiropractor, right? I'm not a big shouty. I'm not big on social media or anything like that. But just gently, consistently repeating the same foundational truths again and again in what you do every day in every environment. And it will change, or it won't. And then there'll be consequences if it doesn't, right? So that's what I would encourage. I would encourage the person in the trenches to just seek out and speak 20 minutes over a cup of tea. Like, just start doing that.
I suppose as well, you're sort of talking about encouraging people to create opportunities. Because again, if you're just in the trenches doing your thing, it's fabulous, but you're not going to create those opportunities for change.
Yeah, it's my favorite quote is the best way to predict the future is to create it. Right. So do little things that create a change. Right. And it might not be an instant change, right? This is not an instant gratification thing, right? This is a slow, gentle shift into something different. But our culture is shifting, right? We've got young people now that are seeking out, right? How can I be better because my parents are still sick, right? So we have a big cultural shift happening. Like kids they're not doing the same thing that I was doing 20 years ago. You know, they're ice plunging and saunaing and all sorts of stuff that was just not happening before. So there is a cultural shift now happening, and if we can completely be in the mix and forefront of that, because we've been talking about it since our inception 120 something years ago, because it's true. So quietly whisper, seek out, question things. You know, don't stay stuck in your little space.
I love that. Speaking of change, something I wanted to ask both of you really, I wanted to get your thoughts on AI and how that might affect or already is affecting chiropractic. And do you think AI will ever or could ever replace a human chiropractor?
What do you think, Laura?
I think there's a time and a place for AI, but I think one of the biggest things, and again, from a vitalistic chiropractor's perspective, is actually the connection that we create with our people. And I think that there's such powerful aspect of the adjustment and how, you know, it can help people's, you know, like Kirsti mentions, bodies adapt and things like that. But a big chunk of what we do is that connection and people feeling heard and understood. And you can see people, how they open up different and how they're much more accepting of the adjustment because of that groundwork that you put in, which a machine, robot, AI, in my mind, would never be able to recreate. So there's aspects to running your practice where AI might come in. But in my opinion, it would never replace, you know, the connection, our hands, touch element of chiropractic care as well. So yeah, that would be my answer.
Completely agree. There's also this, Stu Bittman talks about this heart field, right? This, is it 6 foot heart field thing? Is that what he talks about?
It sounds right, yeah.
So there's this like energetic thing that happens when human beings are together. I'm not sure how an android, whatever you want to call it, I don't know how that would happen. It terrifies me slightly to think that we would be in this automated world without human connection. But we already have a situation where people have like emotional relationships with AI bots via ChatGPT, like it's happening, but that's not a physical exchange. I can remember when we had the fun times in 2020 and one of my very good friends came in to see me when we were open and I hugged her and she went, well, no, I didn't hug her. I went to put my hands on her and she flinched slightly and she was like, I've just realized no one else has touched me. And I was like, oh my gosh.
I was actually just going to loop back to that of we've seen in the COVID times where there was less connection, how especially our young people have really struggled to then step back into society, you know, in all aspects, even if it's just a simple thing of how to communicate with, you know, their peers or people older than them. So again, if we lose that, we lose a big part of society that, again, in my mind, it would only, you know, society would only go downhill. It wouldn't be an improvement.
No. I can't even. As a mum of 3 girls, that absolutely terrifies me. The thought of this unconnected, autonomous world. You know, and I do see there's benefits from a system stuff with AI, like clever little things that run behind the show.
Yeah, I was going to ask that if either of you use AI for, you know, any admin parts of your day-to-day work life.
Unconsciously, I probably do. I'm sure there's some AI stuff within Practice Hub I don't know about.
I was thinking the same thing, to be honest. I've got, I suppose I call it automated. There's a lot of stuff that's, you know, you set it up and you can just click and go. I use ChatGPT a little bit for ideas. Or if I'm writing an email and I realise my email's a little spicy, pop into ChatGPT and say, can you soften this a little bit, or can you change it? And then it'll give me ideas on how to reword my spicy email. So moments like that, but I would never just pull stuff from, say, ChatGPT and use it, because it's not me and people can hear it's not me.
Yeah.
But ideas, yeah. But then again, is that a good thing? Because it reduces my brain's capacity to create, because I'm then using something else. So is it going to change? Is it going to, creativity, is that going to be changing in the future? Because people, instead of figuring it out for themselves, relying on technology a bit more.
Yeah, we had that conversation about, she wrote this book, Untamed, Glennon Doyle. She talks about that we're losing a generation of artists and musicians and poets because ChatGPT does it, right? So that's terrifying. Although a client of mine once said, but it gives us the opportunity to be creative. And I'm like, but why are people going to be when they can just go and have someone else do it for them? My daughter had to create a Christmas card for school, and she said, I just want to look up some ideas. And I went, no, here's a blank piece of paper. I want 20 doodles before you even remotely start to look at some image somewhere else. And she came up with something really beautiful, but I had to kind of push. She's only 10, right? And she had to push that. So it's true, Laura, like that. I find it helpful to create structure. Like, I want to do this thing. Can you give me an outline?
Yeah.
So I like ChatGPT for that. And then I can fill in the bits around it, because sometimes there's so much information that you're like, I just need someone to filter it out for me a bit. But I don't like the idea of some automated bot delivering a correction.
Let's put it this way. It would be interesting if we got to that point, but I still think there would be a huge market for human chiropractors, because there's going to be still a massive group of people that want that human element. I know somebody that didn't want to go to a practice because they had a virtual team on the phones, and they wanted to speak to somebody in the practice. So even though that's not AI, step away from the practice, they chose to go somewhere else because of that. So, that's a little stepping stone. But yeah, still think, a lot of people would want the real thing.
I think I already do it anyway. Like, if I go to a supermarket, I kind of don't want to go down those self-checkout things. I try and go to people. And there are times when I see a massive queue, especially if people, maybe those retired, like that might be their only contact with a human being. So that they could already use some AI. Not that I suppose there is some form of AI. Have you noticed they've got screens? They don't work if they don't see your picture. Anyway, watch, because my friend once tried to cover the screen and it wouldn't work. Anyway, let's digress. You might not put that in the podcast. But I'm just saying that people want that connection, and it's already happening with supermarkets.
That's true. So I didn't even think of the supermarket comparison, but yeah, it's
not
it's
that we're like
true.
a supermarket as chiropractors, but
no. So some final questions I wanted to ask. I guess a bit of like a rapid kind of fire questions, just to wrap things up. If you were to have dinner with 5 other people, who would they be? Dead or alive? 5 guests at your dinner party. Who would you choose and why?
I'd like to speak to Mabel Palmer.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to have a conversation with Reggie Gold, just because he's pretty cool. Probably, are we talking chiropractors or anybody?
Anyone.
I'd love to have a conversation with Heath Ledger. Like, I just think he was really cool, and I was really sad that he went. He had a mega mind. Who else? Probably my dad. Love to have a conversation with my dad, and probably my grandma. So my dad's mum. So those, I think that'd be an interesting table.
It would be a mix. Just in case some of the younger generations don't know Mabel and Reggie, just quickly, maybe instead of telling us who they are, why you'd want them at the table.
Okay, so Mabel Palmer was probably the first woman in chiropractic. And she was married to BJ. Well, yeah, BJ? DJ? Can't remember. I don't know. One of the founders of chiropractic. And so how does she manage that? Like, as a woman being married to those individuals. Reggie, do I talk about who Reggie is? Reggie, again, was just this mega thinker and was just so certain in what he was doing and how he delivered it, and really passionate, and never suffered a fall, and was just very forthright. And like, we all need a bit of that energy every now and then. So Summer Reggie would be good.
Fantastic. And in fact, I'd like to ask you both this, just in case you have a different answer. How do each of you describe chiropractic, or how would you describe chiropractic to a 5-year-old?
Go, Laura.
I would keep it really simple. And yes, it goes a little bit from a feeling point of view, but again, it's how 5-year-olds understand it. And I'd go down the road of, I'm just going to help you feel more comfortable in your body and be able to do all the stuff you want to do, whether it's jumping on a trampoline or sleeping all night. That's what we're going to do.
I say that chiropractic helps your body work really well. It helps unlock your superpowers.
I like that.
Superpowers, good one. And my last question, and I want to ask you both, if you could finish this sentence, chiropractic is
awesome.
Beautiful.
Very similar. My brain put a swear word in this to start off with, so I'm not going to swear. It's chiropractic is fantastic.
Amazing. Yeah. Awesome and fantastic, and no bleeping required for the podcast editors. Amazing. Well, thank you both so much for joining us today. And to everyone listening, if you have any suggestions of anyone else you'd like to hear in the upcoming episode of our podcast, contact the UCA. We're always open to ideas and suggestions, and keep your ears out for the next episode. Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Let's Talk UCA. Your feedback will help us deliver new topics and guests for future episodes. The bios of the interviewee and co-hosts, along with our contact links, are included in the show notes below. Thank you for listening.